This week on Media Delta, The Pirates of Dark Water, Part 1. In case you ever wondered what Hanna-Barbera would be like if they had a budget. Hello and welcome to a new episode of Media Delta. We're talking about kind of a weird thing that I've always somewhat been fascinated by because it's something that I've never watched when it came out, but it was something that I was aware of. Long time ago in Retro Ink Rhapsody days, we took a look at a pair of games based on Pirates of Dark Water, a Hanna-Barbera cartoon that aired in the early 90s that always had kind of a cult following, but I had never watched. So when we were playing it, I didn't really have a whole lot of, thing to look at. But that actually was, those games were actually one of the things that actually prompted me to think about doing this Media Delta, well, Media Delta in general, because it's something, yeah, like I mentioned, it's something that I've always been fascinated by, but never actually watched. So, um, in this episode, we watched the first 6 episodes of Pirates of Dark Water, which in turns out to be the first season plus one. Um, so we're kind of mostly discussing the first season of Pirates of Dark Water in this episode. In about 2 weeks, we're going to do another episode talking about a few more episodes into season 2, so we can get kind of a feel at how that goes. And as I mentioned, I use we because multiple people watch this. So who do I have with me?
Hi, I'm Axe, and I'm here to find some ancient treasure.
I'm Norman Rafferty, and I'm here to think of the poor, starving monkey birds.
I'm Torpid Typhus, and I'm here to get devoured by a giant boat.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, Pirates of Dark Water is in fact a show about pirates and also of dark water. Um, except when you just kind of think of it like that, this is not your normal pirate show, because there's quite a bit of sci-fi also involved, um, and there's kind of a lot to kind of unwrap here, or it's kind of open to questions. So I am going to forego our normal question format, and instead we're just going to kind of go round robin and kind of just bring up stuff we want to talk about. So, uh, Ax, why don't we at least start with what are your general impressions and what is something you'd want to bring up?
General impressions are it's as good as I remembered it being. I enjoyed rewatching this, and Pirates of the Dark Water was actually kind of a big part of my own childhood. I had a personalized book where they had the main character was you with your name in it, and I know it's dorky and all that, but I was a kid. Shut up. But it was
A
one of my
dorky kid.
exactly. I was a dorky kid, and it was one of my more treasured little mementos. But I mean, if we're to talk about this, we have to talk about how it's we mentioned this a number of times. It's a Hanna Barbera cartoon, but with a budget, and it definitely does show at least in the first 5 episodes. Um, and it's a lot of fun to watch. It's a lot of fun to uh, engage with. Um, the characters are all interesting. Each one is different in their own ways. Uh, the voice acting is really good. Um, I could say it does have an odd pacing to it, where it's kind of really fast in a number of episodes, but in other episodes it kind of slows itself down a bit and allows you to kind of glean what's going on and like catch up to the show, whereas like some episodes it's just really hard to kind of stay on track with what they're doing. Um, but my general impressions are it's still an enjoyable watch. Anything in particular I'd like to talk about is the fact that it never got finished. It's probably the worst part about it, and at no fault of the show, I would say, but it still sucks that there's no proper ending to it. Please, 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo it for us, somebody.
Yeah, that is one thing going into it that is kind of infamous. That this show lasted for like 21 episodes, and that's it. Uh, like the kind of the MacGuffins of this are the 13 treasures of rule, and they only got 8. Was it?
8 out of 13. Yes.
Yeah, so it definitely never got finished. Although I believe the Genesis game has an ending, like you get all 13 treasures, and I didn't play far enough to get into that because that game wasn't that great. But nonetheless, um,
And pointedly came out a year after the show was off the air.
yeah, that was a pretty late Genesis game if I remember correctly.
94.
Yeah, that's definitely a late Genesis game. And yeah, it is. I can definitely see why. Like, yeah, you could definitely tell the budget that went into this, because there are very few, if any, reused content. Like, you don't get the staple Hanna Barbera jank, I guess.
I mean, no, there's still jank. Don't.
There's some,
But it's not
still,
the hard. It's not the hard jank that you
Yeah.
get.
I would just say there's definitely jank. There's like animation errors here and there, especially going. So like, real quick, going into the second season, there's a noticeable dip in quality.
Yeah, there
Yes.
is.
Yeah, there's like some coloring errors that are definitely noticeable. But like compared to say something like, oh, I don't know, Snagglepuss or something like that,
Yeah, don't trip over that bar you
or
set.
Pac-Man. This is
So it's still not as good as the greatest Hanna-Barbera property, Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law.
It is the best one. You get that thing I sent you? But no, it's the shit. My brain fell apart as I was coming up with the point. Yeah, no, like that's true. You don't see too much of reused backgrounds, reused animations, but you do still get the smears. You still get some of the little things that are very trademark Hanna-Barbera in terms of its animation jank.
I love when my facial features don't line up at all.
Or the head moves a little bit too quickly for the lips. Like, it's very subtle at times, but it definitely does happen.
You ever see a Zelda CDI game?
God, please
Yeah.
don't talk about those.
yes.
Yeah, that's the vibe I think most of us were getting.
No, but this is good
Yeah.
quality. CDI quality was terrible.
I could kind of see the like over animated a little bit in some cases.
Yeah, there were some weird over animated bits, but it was still like fucking Hanna-Barbera jank, and I still don't understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was like weird amounts of motion for a lot of the shit they did.
I appreciate that you still have that
Yeah.
as an emote.
Yeah, thankfully, we are using Discord to record this, and on my server, I have the whole damn intro to Faces of Evil as an emote. So when in time that I need to pull it up as a reference, I can do it on the fly. And I'm watching it right now, and I can kind of see where the over animatedness, like this animation is really shit, but it also is kind of over animated in the same way that Pirates of Dark Water is sometimes.
But like exaggerated motions.
Yes, exaggerated is probably a better phrase.
I think, Torpid, you pointed out that they move their heads a whole lot when they talk throughout the series.
There's in general they move their bodies and heads a lot when talking or doing anything. Gesticulate wildly. They almost put Stan the Salesman to shame from the
Yeah.
Monkey Island games.
Yeah, no moving plaid though.
I immediately
Which is
went.
shame.
I immediately started thinking of those inflatable flailing arm tube men.
Because
Not far off.
it's interesting to talk about that, because it's like they really wanted this show to look really good, because you could tell they spent a lot of money on it. But we're all in agreement that what they got was a bizarre kind of over animated look, where it's obvious they're paying for a lot of frames. They're not doing the recycled backgrounds or the limited animation of recycled walk sequences. They're obviously like, they want it there, but what they're doing is just goofy and distracting.
Yep.
It also, like, I'm looking, they list the actual animation studios that are involved
Ooh,
in this
yeah.
show. They are all also, I'd imagine this is a logistical nightmare. They're located all over the place because you have on its Wikipedia's
Not as much, because I did some research on this. Well, backpedal a little bit. So this show starts its genesis in 1989. About then, Hanna-Barbera is still riding pretty high off of another fantasy show called The Smurfs, which is entering its 10th and last season. To help with the load of doing The Smurfs, which had ballooned to about an hour about this time, as well as some other shows, Hanna-Barbera founds a studio in the Philippines called Phil's Cartoon, F-I-L-S Cartoon, which if you look across the entire Dark Water timeline, they're in every level of production. To help out with the first 5 episodes, they contract Cuckoo's Nest, which I think is a different name, and Wang Studios, Wang Studios is still around. The other one lasted till about 2000. But those are bigger name studios. Like Wang Shu Studios actually did work for Disney and other production companies and some animes and some stuff like that. Whereas Phil's Cartoon, if you look in their track record on IMDb, they get fired a lot because they're terrible. But that's basically Hanna-Barbera's own house studio at the time. Like, they basically own most of it, and it's terrible. And that's where most of the terrible stuff comes from. And the reason why we're going to see a big quality dip between 5 and 6 is because episodes 1 through 5, they outsource it to different studios as well as Phil's. From 6 on, it's nothing but Phil's.
Oh, okay. Now, I can't find any solid evidence, but I'm curious about this. I'm looking at the list of studios that Wikipedia at least has, because they have Tama, they have Mr. Big, also have Madhouse listed as an animation, helping animation. I'm curious what they did.
I think that's if that's on Wikipedia, it's not agreeing with IMDb. Wang Shu Studios is the link between those. Like, Wang is the studio that helps out with the first 5 episodes, and they work with everybody like Disney, Madhouse, and the rest of them.
Yeah, they have they have like an others, and then like it's listed Madhouse Inc., Big Star Enterprises, and Candy Cartoons.
Yeah, I think I mean, I can do some more digging, but really the common thing here is Phil's Cartoon is a joint. Hanna-Barbera owns part of that studio, and they were farming a lot of work to it. And that's the name that's going to come up. Everyone else is probably someone to Emergency. And later, I guess, when we talk about the last season, we can talk about the production problems that wound up getting it off the air.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. Yeah. Also, like, I think that might actually be my thing when it comes to my turn. But yeah. Actually, do you have anything else you wanted to?
Oh no, I was done a while ago.
Okay, just wanted to check. Rafferty.
I mean, like, to build on the weirdness we were seeing here, I just want to say my one big review of Dark Water is they don't make cartoons like this anymore. And
I mean, that is true.
That is true. That's both a positive and a negative, because I think this is the last gasp you're going to see of Hanna-Barbera style storytelling. Like, I agree with Axe that there's this weird thing where they often seem like they're out of breath. Like, they have so much they want to say and get done so quickly that you can't pause to enjoy any of it. And then there are other episodes where it seems like they're filling for time. It's got very strange pacing. Like this show could only have come out in this window because they started it in 89, and a couple of huge things are about to happen in the 90s. In 91, you're going to have the Batman animated series, which is the next thing I would compare this to. Another young adult series that's action oriented, that tries to push the envelope because they want to start punching people and having violence, and it actually has guns in it. So it's like Dark Water, where it's also, because Dark Water in like the 90s, you didn't have a show with swords and violence and freaking on-screen character death. Because there's at least one.
I still love the fart gun.
The fart gun is one of my favorites, but there's also like the guy visibly by Dark Water.
Yeah.
Yeah, just fucking devoured wholesale.
Right. So they're trying, to push what they can get away with young adult. Plus, also there's some level of continuity. I mean, not a lot, but they're trying for it. So
there definitely is in the first 5 episodes.
Yeah,
those actually like flow from one to the other.
It actually reminded me of, because I didn't realize until we got to episode 6. It reminded me a lot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, when you were watching that, how the first 5 episodes have this continuity. But then I was looking at kind of the episode, like the synopsis that was on Wikipedia and I think another site. I think it was IMDb. And it's like, oh, this is just a completely different thing every episode.
Well, it was like TMNT. I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot about that. Both Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Dark Water started as a mini-series event that they promoted. So the reason why there's continuity in the first few episodes is because they made them have some sort of continuity. I guess maybe if they want to do a video, or I don't know. But they did that with continuity, and then you're right. Then later they go to a more episodic format. So yeah. It's just like I guess I need to get this out of the way. I can't stop thinking about One Piece.
Okay.
And, I can't stop thinking about, like, not only does the Bruce Timm come out, but also anime is about to come. By the time this show airs in the US, all of Dragon Ball has already aired in Japan, and they're already starting work on Dragon Ball Z. And so anime is about to show up in the 90s and it's going to like a much purer version of anime, like not the Robotech type sanitized stuff. Like eventually they're going to start airing just Pokemon, just flat out Pokemon, and you know, not, well, I guess they renamed Ash, but moving on.
Yeah, Pokemon, Sailor Moon, and eventually Dragon Ball Z.
Right, Sailor Moon. Basically, you know, and then Yu-Gi-Oh! It's going to be, instead of Saturday morning cartoon programming being, you know, Hanna-Barbera used to dominate. Like in the 80s, Hanna-Barbera was a big major player. But the 90s come around, you know, they have a lot of competition. The show could only been in that window. It's the last gasp of that kind of storytelling where action sequences are weird. Like people keep shoving each other over and they seem to move both too fast and not enough. And you're not sure where people are standing. I mean, you compare this to like Batman, where there's a lot of effort in the stage. Or you can compare this to an anime. Like when an anime has cost-cutting moves. Like we kept talking about over-animated, but I'm sure we've all seen the anime where, you know, there's a detailed background and a slow pan and people just talk and they don't even show people's faces when they talk. There's all those, like, you know, Dragon Ball things where just someone's sitting there flapping their gums. But they use that to build a sort of cadence where you can still get like action beats. Like Dragon Ball will have people standing around talking and then a animated action sequence, because they'll be spending some of their effort on some things and some of them on others. You want something like Dark Water, and they're animating everything. Like if two people are just standing there talking, it's not enough for them to sit there. They have to turn their heads, they have to flop, sometimes they spin for no reason. They put so much animation into the nothing scenes that it's almost like exhausting, and it's also weird because it's not well animated. Everyone's all mushy, and it's this weird thing where they want to be really clever and expensive, but they're still doing the Hanna-Barbera type jank where they're just putting too much effort into everything and they don't have the skill to pull it off. They would have been a lot better off if they had started picking up on some of the cost-cutting moves that we would see later in Batman or anime. But this is 1989, or eventually the 91. Hanna-Barbera, I think, still thinks they rule the roost. So I mean, I just want to say, like, I really wanted to like Dark Water, but that and the fact that the anime doesn't look, it just seems misguided to me.
It is like this weird mixture of like kind of sloppy while at the same time over exaggerated and over animated, and it's strange.
Well, you can see the big jump between, like in episodes 1 through 5, there's a lot of medium shots and close-up shots. Like there'll be two characters close together in the same scene. And I think that might be the producer of this is David Kirshner, who also, he just produced the 2 American Tail movies, worked on them and scripted and produced and all that kind of stuff. So I think he was trying, like, I think they're going for a kind of Disney vibe, because I could see it in the storyboards where the two characters are close up and talking to each other and moving. That if this was animated by a Don Bluth or a Disney studio, this would probably look pretty good. But then they handed it off to this Filipino studio or whatever, who they're just like making everybody mush mouth like a Rugrats cartoon, and they won't stop moving. That, you know, this must have looked great on the script and just looks terrible in the shooting. So And that all disappears. But you may have noticed by episode 6, that's all gone. They don't have two characters in a bizarre parallax medium shot. They're back to everyone walks on a straight line. You'll see the backs of people's heads as they talk. The animation's a lot stiffer, but it's also not as weird. I mean, you'll see all that disappear, and they'll go back to the Turbo Team.
How dare you bring that up?
So, I mean, that's my big observation. But I guess if I don't want with animation, I mean, we like the script, right? What's Torpid got to say?
That is a
Yep.
good question. What does
Yeah.
Torpid have to say? I wonder. So I had fun. There's definitely some issues. God. So I'd never seen this before, so this is all new to me. Much like Lolo, I had heard about it. I'd heard people talk about it, say good things, and like, I enjoyed it. I had fun, though I still don't quite see the hype. But it is a fascinating show that could not have existed any other point in time, for any number of reasons. And yeah, Rafferty just saying that just made me realize how much anime kind of changed the playing field for animation over here. But really, I guess I'll talk more about the characters first, because there's the three main characters who just kind of end up appearing together within like the first 10 minutes. It just happens. After the main character stops his fucking job at the lighthouse or whatever, finds out about his big adventure, watches Godzilla get fucked up and dragged away by pirates, because that happened. He just immediately goes to a tavern. First thing he does, talk about fucking amazing treasure. And the second character, whose name I already forgot, Ayaz, appears. They steal a boat together, and all of a sudden, the lady whose name I also forgot, Tula, just appears on the fucking boat, and you have your cast. Also, the mascot character who sucks ass.
Niddler.
Yeah.
Who also like turns coat like the first 2 minutes.
He is only competent when the plot needs him to be. Otherwise, he's a fucking simpering idiot.
Yeah.
And coward. Like, there are times where he's brave, and then there's other times where he's a complete coward.
He is Hanna-Barbera mascot character in its purest form.
Yep, he's the most Hanna-Barbera, and it's Frank Welker voicing him. You can't get much more Hanna-Barbera than that.
Oh, Jesus.
Treasure.
Treasure.
Gotta get the ancient treasure.
So the main characters are brave idiot prince, super sexist pirate who loves being a pirate, and the girl. I can't really say much more about their personalities aside from that.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Like Tula is your quintessential heroine from like the late 80s, early 90s in these sorts of cartoons, which is strong-willed, kicks ass, all that, but still the lady character, just the sole lady character, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all will agree that one place it does shine, though, is the production design. Every place looks unique, and no other. This doesn't look like any other show.
No, it's and I agree with that 100%. It has a look all its own.
Yeah,
Like, not just the locations, just all of the designs for the characters and like the boats and everything are very unique.
that character designer was going ham on this show. Like,
I mean,
man.
Just the ship, the Maelstrom Bloth ship alone, had just a ridiculous amount of character to it, and each character was distinguishable from the others. Like, there's no.
All of them had a unique profile. Yeah.
Yeah, even the background characters, you could still distinguish them from each other. It wasn't, there's no repetition. There was no blobbing of characters. It's just everybody kind of stands out, which again is one of the bigger highlights of the show.
Yeah, the art direction at the very least was very unique and very interesting. And also they played a lot with color too. So like there were a lot of like oranges and purples and all that. And it lended sort of to the look to they did more than just like your basic colors.
See, to me, it's the last gasp of the 1980s. Because if you look at like old Dungeons and Dragons stuff, it was all big, flat, garish colors. And I pointed out some parallels to like Rodney Matthews, uh, um, Peter Andrew Jones, and some of the other artists of that period that would use all these big, bright, colorful contrasts. And that's why I said another reason why this is the last time, because after this in the 90s, fantasy is going to become very brown and gray, and going to like get
And
mired.
green. Brown, gray, and green.
Yeah, but a lot of brown.
Yeah.
You'll see it in the fantasy games, where the video games where it's a lot of brown, and everyone's gonna be wearing leather armor, and then World of Warcraft's gonna come out later and be all blocky and stuff. But I mean, just fantasy doesn't look like that. Like if somebody launched a fantasy in the 90s or even today, they wouldn't use this color scheme. Today they would have computer coloring, so it would look less like She-Ra of the 80s and more like She-Ra of the 2010s, because they would have lots of pastel colors because they have access to that. Whereas this show is still paint and trace. They're still using physical paints and inks, so they're limited to what they can use, which is why they have a lot of garish colors. And also, it's only going to show up on your 360p or 480p television set, so they want to have harsh contrast so you can make stuff out. It's still, I guess I'm just itching here because I'm thinking, man, I would love to see this show get a reboot and see what people would do with it.
So when three of us were watching it together, I had actually mentioned that as I would love to see this show rebooted with modern sensibilities and modern animation.
I just want an ending.
Well, because I mean, I'm pretty sure they were influenced by stuff like He-Man. Like if you watch some shows like He-Man or She-Ra, they also tended to spend a lot on the backgrounds, because the background static, so you don't have to do that much. And they would also have the huge garish colors. I don't think they're as inspired as Dark Water is, but you can also, when we talked about reboots, you can see that when She-Ra picked up and did the reboot, they did a pretty good job of it. It's also a He-Man reboot, but I guess we should talk about Dark Water.
Yeah, I will say also the painted backgrounds were very nice. Just in general, they were very unique and very nice looking. And also the main character radiated powerful himbo energy.
Yeah.
He was very dumb, but very attractive.
Yes.
And very kind.
Yes.
Very naive.
Oh, dear Lord, was he fucking stupid as shit. Oh my god, he was dumber than a sack of bricks.
You talked about the characters being distinctive. That's another thing I like about these kind of fantasy shows, like when they go to, well, it wasn't Jarda. What's the name of Monkey Bird Island?
Pandawa or something like that.
Yeah, like Pandaren or that. So, yeah, people were right. But when they go there, when there's crowd scenes and that kind of stuff, there's all these just weird humanoids just wandering around because it's a fantasy. And so, I love that kind of stuff where things look weird. And you have weird, and they don't have to explain any of it. It's like it's a fantasy.
Even in the intro, they even say it's a strange, an alien world. Whatever the name.
The alien world of Myrrh.
Also, Andorus is the name of the monkey, or of the.
Thank you.
Or wait, no, or God damn it,
Pandawa.
No,
it was Pandawa.
It is Pandawa. I was right.
Okay, right. I was confusing the Monkey Island with the giant ass tree island.
Yeah, and they do even a nice effort of the monkey. Well, the monkey birds are colorful, but they do a nice effort of making them all look different. When the show went to a different location, you could immediately tell visually, I'm in a different place. It was a very strong.
I like when we kept trying to figure out how they fit all those people into the tree. There's just no way.
It was bigger on the inside. It was bigger on the inside.
Bigger on the inside.
Well, notice that's also episode 6, so that's a new team. Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
No, that was Pandawa, wasn't it? That we were talking about the tree, or was it?
That's Andorra. Pandawa is Monkey Bird Island.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I forgot. Well, they also lived in the trees, but regardless, yeah, no, that was episode 6, which was season 2, and that's where. Regardless, though, my other thing is, particularly for the first 5 episodes, I do want to talk about the pacing, because we did talk about it a little bit, but I want to talk about more because there was no fucking room to breathe in those first 5 episodes. I felt like I was missing a lot. Because they could have easily split most of those episodes into 2 or 3 episodes, but they crammed them all into one, and it was relentless in its pacing. It was non-fucking stop. You would have entire, what felt like larger plot lines started and solved in the same episode, and you feel like you missed steps in between because it was so fast.
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
why I want.
if
That's
I
why I
were to
wanted.
if
Oh,
I
go
were
ahead.
to be if I were to be critical, because I really like the show. I like the show a whole lot, and sometimes when I like something, it's hard for me to be critical. But I completely agree that they if and I wonder if it's just something to do with the production schedule, uh, that they ended up throwing it all into one episode. But they absolutely could have gotten away with doing 2 or 3 episodes for particular plots, and it felt like it couldn't breathe sometimes while watching those first episodes, if
It
that
fe-
makes sense.
it feels like the thing that it made me feel like was that they had a like they someone had a vision that they knew that this series was going to get canceled early, so they needed to go as fast as humanly possible to get their story across.
It's kind of like Legend of Korra. Legend of Korra's first season was done with the intent that it was going to be the only season. There wasn't going to be anything more after it, and then that sort of kept on when they got a second, a third, a fourth season. And it almost feels like that's how parts of Darkwater was developed, was with the knowledge of being, this is only going to last a couple episodes, so let's get the most out of it.
Yep, and there's evidence to back that up because first
Torpid
of all,
Y.
it starts with, it starts as a mini series, so it was like they didn't know how well it was going to rate, so they did that, and they went back and edited the miniseries too. Like they made slight changes to the ending of the fifth episode. When it originally aired, they didn't have all like 6 of them on the ship. They only had like 3 of them, so they decided they should put the other characters in because they're recurring. But from what I can read from the reports, this show had a very strong ratings, like which means they might have been surprised or something. But also, when you're running an animation studio, like I said, there's this window here where Hanna-Barbera has part interest in an overseas animation studio that at the time is already notorious for putting out crappy product. So if Hanna-Barbera doesn't give these guys something to do, that studio is going to go under and they won't be able to use it for their other shows like SWAT Cats and Captain Planet. So they need to keep these people employed and keep the studio afloat. So they well, let's go ahead and make 5 episodes because that's what we have the money for. That's a lot of this like animation stuff's hand to mouth, where they're just take whatever work we can to keep us open, and if we last longer, we can. So there's probably a lot of that going on there where they did those first episodes. And there is evidence to show that after they were making more episodes, the reason why they only get 8 out of the 13 treasures is because they started to draw it out more when they thought they would have more legs to the show.
Yeah.
And literally the first episode alone is they establish the plot line, get the main character out of his comfort zone, get the full crew and a boat, and get the first treasure. And it just feels like there are steps you are missing in between all of these, because it all happens within 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's why I compared it to an anime, because they don't take any time to breathe or to like an anime might luxuriate in the setting. Like you might get 2 or 3 setup shots where they'll slowly track over a background. Like when we're in the city of I forget what they call the cave people. I want to call them the Albines because they're a ripoff of Alchemist's Albines. But like it's something like that, you might, if it was an anime, you might expect an establishing shot of the city, and then a medium shot that pans slightly over the palace, and then an interior shot that shows them in the palace, and then they'd be talking to or the voiceover would start and they'd be talking to the king, and it would be slowly brought in and you could go ahead and watch what was going on and enjoy the visuals. But a show like this, it doesn't, I guess because I think it's because they're Hanna-Barbera. They think if they're not constantly showing you motion and constantly showing you things, that you'll get bored and put down your bowl of cereal and wander outside or change channel or something. They're just breathless about it, because a lot of other Hanna-Barbera shows or shows at the time are just like this, where they don't stop for nothing and they never pause to soak in their visuals. And that's a real shame with a show like Darkwater, because it's got that awesome art direction. I would love to see slow pans of these kinds of cities and stuff. I'd love to just...
Go ahead.
Go ahead, I'm done.
I was well, it was nice, like, during some of the, at the very least, like, there were a handful of, like, brief respites where they're just sailing along and you can really take in the strange alien scenery, and it's really neat. Like just the strange mossy pillars jutting out of the fucking ocean as they're sailing along.
Yeah, like there's that scene where they're in that ocean where pillars of rock just bust up and then sink. And you think, like, if this was an anime, they would have like shown the ship going towards one, shown one of those bouncing up. Oh, we're gonna hit it quick! Hit the wheel, and they would like draw it out and make it big and dramatic. In this show, it shows up as an afterthought. And I really will quickly want to mention. You already mentioned the boat that eats other boats. So the villains in the show have a floating city. Like their boat is so huge that they have like an underclass that never sees the sun that lives inside it, and they have a gate on their ship that can eat other ones.
And
They
the
have a
fucking
working
sewer.
sewer system.
There's a sewer in the boat.
Right, and it's so beautiful, but they never like give you the proper scale. They just needed to spend like a minute or two establishing the sheer immensity and frightening of this ship, but they're in so much of a hurry that they never do that. It robs the show of a lot of its power because these villains are really scary.
It is like it would have been nice, yeah, to establish like more of the setting and all that too. Just really allow itself to just soak in and everything, but it just everything goes by so quickly. Or like when they get the first treasure, there was that really neat sort of like stretch of ocean with the waterfalls on either side, and they just fucking tear ass through it.
And not even through it, they jump off of it at one point.
Yeah.
Apparently, their boat flies.
Yeah,
We did not steal this from the Roger Dean Fragile album cover.
it's fine. We never touch on it again.
Yep.
It never comes up again.
Yeah. There's a lot of not wasted potential, but there's a lot of like, you really over designed this, didn't you? Like, if you're like, I'm sure someone like people probably just put their like, oh, what if they did like this kind of, it's like that trying describing a very simple scene or a scene that really doesn't need to be super elaborate, but then they over elaborate on it. And I'm like, man, I really like, you really didn't need to go to all that effort.
I just wanted them to luxuriate in it. Like there's
Yeah.
just some scenes in this that just pop out to me of like, this is only in dark water, but the show itself just feels like it has to rush right through it.
Yeah.
It is almost like it's afraid to slow down and take it all in.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling like if you watch other action shows, like, well, Thundar the Barbarian, I think would be a big one to know about. There's also like Goldie Gold and Action Jack, another show that uses the same techniques from this time period. Almost all of the young adult 80s action series are like this. They don't pause for anything. They never like stop to look at anything. And most of the shows are pretty boring, so who cares? Just like wandering around a city or whatever. But a show like this just needed more time to. I do think we can all agree the fart gun scene was well animated.
That was
fucking
a
hilarious.
very well animated fart gun, which for those who haven't watched, there is a gun that just looks like it has a lizard head, which you'd imagine would be like some sort of flamethrower.
No, it's not a
or
lizard
something.
head. It's a lizard in a bottle.
Right. And then it just breathes this sleep gas that is colored green and unfortunate.
Yeah, I think it's implied that it crushes the lizard and the lizard breathes a sleep gas to knock everyone out.
Yep.
But it has to be implied because they can't like show you that the lizard actually died because you might cry. It's kind of weird.
It's a living.
Can't believe you would quote the Flintstones at this time
In this Hanna-Barbera cartoon, yeah, it's
in this place.
messed up already. God. So, I guess, Torb, was that it?
Yeah, I guess.
I guess then it's my turn to kind of I thought it was all right. Like I enjoyed watching it. It I don't think there's really anything else I can elaborate that hasn't been already elaborated. It's a show that it's kind of it's like, even if some of the plots are not exactly the most like on a fundamental level are not the most unique, at least you have the fun ride of just looking at everything that is happening, because there's at least that going for it, which if you're not like, that is something that's like, well, if you're not going to be interesting story wise, if you make it art wise, I will at least be able to sit through and get to the part where your story is actually good again. And Yeah. Just trying to think of like the one thing that actually stood out to me, that I found was kind of fascinating for the, at least especially for the time, was the diversity of color of people. Um, you didn't just have like there was very few light skinned people in that show.
The main character is dark skinned, and I apologize if I say almond eyed, but he does have a particular stylized eye design. But he's also blonde at the same time. So it's a very, and the other main characters are also like, it's a very, the ethnicity of the show is very much in doubt. I get like Earthsea vibes from it.
Yeah, I could kind of see that. Now, oh man, now that you mentioned that, like especially you mentioned Earthsea, because I'm trying to think like almost like the descriptions of the characters in like Left Hand of Darkness. Like I think it wasn't the main character like isn't it dark skinned but like white hair or something
Uh,
like that?
the ethnicity of characters in Ursula K. Le Guin novels are often very.
Yeah, it has that vibe to it, which I found at least a little interesting.
Well, I
Um,
mean, this is going to sound really nerdy, but one thing I appreciated was the inversion of Campbellian monomyth. Ugh. In a lot of these stories, especially kids' entertainment, especially like anime, you'll see that some kid is the chosen one, and everybody talks about how he's destined to save the world. Now, this guy in the series, he's a lighthouse keeper, or hero, like he's a lighthouse keeper. And when he finds out that he could get these treasures and save the world, uh, even though he's the son of royalty, he never brings that up. Like other people talk about it, but he doesn't like to bring that up. And he wants to get the treasures because he wants to save the world. And he's fighting an evil villain who, like, if I get the 13 treasures, I can rule the world. So there's nothing that says in there like where the hero's destined to. Even when he talks to Godzilla in the temple and reads the poem that explains the whole thing, it's like, well, whoever finds the 13 treasures can rule all the dark water. And it's like, oh, well, I guess it should be me because I'm not a jerk who will enslave the world. So it's not like no one talks about how he's destined when he shows up. They don't do "You're a Wizard, Harry" and talk about how he's the only one who can operate this. In fact, Tula will later become like the wizard character. But I appreciated that our heroes are supposed to overcome the odds, not because of some providence they have. Like even She-Ra, she's got Eternian bloodline, so she's destined. This is just some guy who showed up one day, and anyone can use the compass to find the treasures. So he's here to save the world because he's a hero. And I just thought that that's a good inversion. You see a lot of these shows that always talk about someone only this pure of heart can find the Holy Grail or special sword or whatever. I thought that was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, no, yeah, as you said, like the legend itself it doesn't really mention any sort of chosen one or anything. It's just, hey, there are these things, the gems of rule, or whatever they are. Here's what they can do. And so he takes it upon himself. It's not like he just sits there and waits for things to happen. No, he goes and makes them happen.
At no point is he the reluctant hero of saying, I can't do this, I'm just a kid, or I need help from an elder mentor. No, he just says, oh, that's the compass. I guess I'm finding the 13 treasures now.
Also, a lot of times, like, he just helps people for the sake of helping people and happens to get one of the gems.
Oh, the whole Monkey Bird episode where, yes, it's for young adults and we're hammering that slavery is bad. But also, like, when he shows up, he says, well, I have to free all the people from slavery. That's what a good person would do. And then he does it. I thought that was also pretty refreshing, that he's like, he's a genuinely good guy.
Yeah, and like when Ayaz is caught stealing the gold, like, and is like, well, your people stole from us. He needs to face consequences. He's like, no, I am kind of the leader here. I guess I'll take the punishment for him.
Yeah, they may bicker with one another, but the three main leads actually genuinely respect and look out for each other.
The weird thing is, though, that it kind of like that because like originally they're like, well, I'm a pirate, I'm going to steal things, and then like there is a from like 3 to 11 terms of loyalty that it just kind of it's not like a steady buildup. It is a okay, I'm kind of just doing my thing, and then snap, okay, I am dead. I am going to die for Ren.
Well, pointedly, the original release of the show is called Darkwater, and technically the name Pirates of Darkwater doesn't refer to our heroes, it refers to Bloth and the guys on the Maelstrom. It refers to the bad guys.
Yeah, I did notice that when I was reading up on like the wiki.
To be fair, I will say it wasn't immediate. For a little bit, they were still doing shitty things, and he was a genuinely positive influence on them. Was the big thing.
Yeah.
Like Ayaz was still a shitbag pirate, but he was a shitbag pirate who cared for his captain because his captain went out of his way to prove himself numerous times. It's not like he was just like he earned that loyalty, I guess is what I'm saying.
And Tula wasn't a whole hell of a lot better either. She eventually betrays the entire crew, granted for specific causes that you could argue are good, but she still betrays both Ren and Ayaz, and hands the compass and jewel over to Bloth.
Yeah, but they established that she was doing that. I mean, spoilers, that she was doing that because I need to save my homeland of the
Well,
magic.
that's why I added. That's why
Yeah.
I added that.
Yep.
whole-
Yeah, and like
Yep.
You're right.
Ren too, like when he finds out, just holds no animosity for her or anything. He genuinely forgives her.
Yeah, there is the fight where Ayaz comes across Tula like at first, and then they start to fight. But the moment that Ayaz sees Ren, it's all completely forgotten. Though then again, that is when Bloth and company started to, appear.
Yeah, and also once again Ayaz, because they thought Ren was dead at one point. So like Ayaz
'Cause
was
He got booped on the head.
Yeah.
Ayaz was not in a great place for a while, but he genuinely wanted to do right by Ren.
Yeah, like he
We thought
kept
was
talking
dead.
about carrying on Ren's quest.
Yeah, it was neat.
Yeah, I remember that now. I thought that was kind of neat. They thought he was dead for a while. Once again, it happened so quickly that for like an episode, but that's not something you see a lot, especially in young adult entertainment
Yeah.
in the early 90s.
So, I think we've covered a lot of ground. Is there anything else that anyone else wanted to cover? Because I think we kind of covered all the usual. We talked about the characters. Or do we want to go into any other particular characters in depth?
We didn't mention that there are at least two voice actors in the mix.
Yeah,
There's Michael
yeah.
Bell makes an appearance in the show. Voices Raziel in Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, and more famously, probably not at the time, Tim Curry voicing Konk.
Yeah. This series
It's
had
still a weird casting.
It is hearing him do I remember him from Muppet Treasure Island, and he was just Tim Curry in a pirate suit. That's really all there was. Here he's trying to sound like a pirate, and it's bizarre.
well, yeah, because I mean, Tim Curry, like this is what 91, I think. Just kind of looking through his thing, like he wasn't like I think we had this exact same discussion when we talked about Red October of him being in that. Like he
Yeah.
was not that he the only cult thing that cult things that he did at that point, he did Clue, and then he was Frankenfurter.
He also
Rocky
did
Horror,
Legend.
yeah.
Oh, he
No.
was also in It's Legend. Is that Tangerine Dream?
Yes,
One.
the Tangerine
Okay,
Dream,
yes.
Tom Cruise. That's a cult
Yeah,
movie because like only 8 people saw it, but they all remember it.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that one. So yeah, he was a relatively more obscure actor because he hadn't even started like doing a lot of his voice over stuff. Like he had appeared in 2 episodes of Roseanne, apparently.
Yeah,
Actually,
he-
no.
he-
Excuse me. He did not appear in Roseanne at this point.
Yeah, he
He's
was a
also-
working actor. Yeah.
Also, I forgot that Legend of Prince Valiant got a TV show because apparently he voiced Sir Gawain in that.
Yeah, and
Um,
also, when does the Fox production of Peter Pan come out? Because he voices Captain Hook in that.
I don't know.
It's about the time period.
But yeah, there's a number of other well-known cartoon voice actors. You have Frank Welker that we mentioned, Peter Cullen. I believe he's Optimus Prime, right?
He's a gazillion cartoon voices.
Yeah.
One of which was Optimus.
Optimus, because he was. I just look at it. I just see Transformers.
In fact,
Optimus
a
Prime.
show you'll see. I mean, a lot of the Hanna-Barbera people, like Frank Welker and Peter Cullen, a lot of them in this, especially a lot of Smurfs people.
Yeah.
Because remember, Smurfs had just wrapped up.
Also, Jim Cummings was also in the. A lot of people actually that we saw or heard in East Book 1 and 2 for the TurboGrafx. They were all in that. Well, Team Curry wasn't in that. That would be we had just had Thomas Hayden Church instead.
And we couldn't find Paul Eiding.
So Paul Eiding also did voices in the later part. Renee, I forget how you pronounce his last name, but Renee Ajubernau, I think, voiced Cargent in a few episodes. You also had just coming off of Little Mermaid, you had Jodie Benson, who voices Ariel as Tula. And I don't think the voice of Ayaz had done. So the voice of Ayaz was Hector Elizondo, I think is how you pronounce it. He was in a couple things, it looks like. Seems like he was in Last Man Standing, was the last thing that he was in.
Yeah, this is a lot of end of an era. This is the end of the Hanna-Barbera era of voice acting.
Oh, I know what he is. He's Dr. Bell from Monk. Okay. There's my point of reference for him.
Wow, Dr. Bell. Is that the one who's in the early season?
No, because that was Dr. Kruger because the voice
Dr. Kruger thing.
Yeah, because the actor who played him died. But yeah, I'm just looking through other. Brock Peters as Bloth is really good. I for a second, because I saw that Jim Cummings was in this, I thought that Jim Cummings was voicing Bloth because he has a lot of energy that the Saddam version of Robotnik has.
Yeah, I can see that because I always thought Jim Cummings was unusual as Robotnik. I probably should step forward and say I also like not only the heroes feel like good people and look out for each other. The villains in this, like they didn't feel a need to make them too comic. I mean, I think Conk hangs out with two goofy guys who don't get. But for the most part, Bloth and his other guys seem like a focused evil that they talk like they know what they're doing, and they're only getting thwarted because our heroes are good, not because they felt like they had to do comic relief or stuff to send that up, which is also unusual for the time period. Like, because geez, like Jim Cummings, you're talking about Jim Cummings as Robotnik in the dark Sally Acorn period, but contrast that with the show that came before that, where you've got, Long
John Baldry.
Yeah, where the villains are constantly shown to be goofy and ridiculous, whereas Dark Water, the villains are creepy and nasty and know what they're doing.
Yeah, they're actually competent is the thing.
Yeah.
Like, they have gotten one over on Ren and crew a number of times.
I mean, Conk alone got away with the compass and first treasure for what was it, like 4 or 5
It was
episodes.
like 2 or 3 episodes, yeah.
Yeah, for a good long period of time. So like even their dumbest, lowest level of bad guy is still fairly competent and fairly able to, do damage if they need to.
Also, like, Bloth himself is genuinely threatening and imposing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I will say, he is also aware of the threat that the Dark Water is, but also he wants the fucking treasure.
Because he wants to control the Dark Water. He doesn't want to get rid of it. Yeah. And I think Bloth's chaoticness really makes him way more like some villains. They goof around like, oh, okay, I guess my second mate kind of goofed up. I'll give them another chance, whatever, but I'll threaten them. And instead, the first time Conk screws up, Bloth tosses him into the pit. Like it's
don't forget the time that they just had a man get fucking eaten by the Dark Water.
Right, yeah. So like it's watching these villains and feeling like, yeah, these are actually villains. They are very, very much a threat.
That's also the other thing that I just remembered that also makes me kind of like, I'm surprised that they did that. They allude many times that the reason why Conk has a peg leg is because Bloth put him in the pit and he got it bitten off.
Yeah, by the worms that Ren fights off.
The constrictors, which are not xenomorphs at all.
And they even pointed out that there's only 2 people who have ever escaped them, Ren and Conk.
And most of Kong,
Most of Conk,
as they phrase it.
yeah.
Which is also great because every time they allude to that, like they zoom in on his leg.
Oh, I thought the grim thing. Actually, did this show up in that episode where they throw Conk in the pit the second time and everybody takes bets whether he's going to survive or not?
Yeah, that was this one.
Yep.
That was this
Yeah.
one. Yeah,
and when he comes out alive, everyone beats him up because they're mad that they lost all their.
yes, that is definitely in this set. They also because that also introduced us to the person who I'm going to just refer to as the chest bitch, like the person who is strapped on the front of the car in like a Mad Max. You just have this person who is just strapped to the chest for some reason.
Eee.
And
it's
that's
like-
that's I think it's Sloth's right hand.
His
Man.
advisor or whatever, yeah.
I forget his name.
It's just great because
Yeah, he just has this fucking like little gremlin of a man who's tied up to this chest and carries it around.
it's just how nonchalant he is because eventually he gets kidnapped by a guy they meet at the tavern, basically an old friend of Aya's. Basically, they take him back, and it's just the like you see the guy take the chest and the guy with it, and the guy attached to the chest is like, man, okay, I'm
Nobody
just
talks
going."
about he's the chest bitch. I mean, that is why we remember the show because like no explanation of who this guy is, and then he's just going to disappear. He's a throwaway guy.
Also, we were talking voice actors. I do because we talked about the other two people. Ren, voice actor, hasn't done a whole lot, but he has done a role that I'm sure a lot of people who are familiar with video games are familiar with. For a long time, he was the voice of Sephiroth. That is Craig Newburn.
That's right. He did Sephiroth from it started with I think
Pretty
Dissidia.
much the first time that Sephiroth was voiced, actually.
Well, no, well,
I-
yeah, because
I
the
th-
first Kingdom Hearts was Lance Bass, and then Kingdom Hearts 2 was Ren's voice actor.
I believe. So I'm looking through and I'm trying to see. Yeah, he was the voice of, I think, Advent Children. Yeah, Advent Children was the first one that he voiced him in. Also, he had voiced in Justice League. He had voiced Superman and Clark Kent.
Oh, after Tim Daly left or whatever.
George Newbern.
I guess, yes, George Newbern. Also in Chicago Hope, and also before this, he had worked. He had a few roles on. He had a minor character on Designing Women.
Yeah, so I mean that's common for this period that these guys don't have key roles. They're doing voiceover work because it's pretty easy to do. You don't have to do makeup or dress up. You show up at the studio, read the lines, and go.
Also, I'll mention that he was also in Adventures in Babysitting. But yes,
He's not Thor, so who cares?
yeah. So yeah, that's kind of talked about the characters mostly. The guy at the bar, like Ayaz's old friend, is pretty good. But yeah, other than that, I think we've kind of touched on all the characters, and I think, unless did anyone else have any final points that they want to bring out?
Nope, I'm good.
Well, as I mentioned, that's kind of, we're just focusing on the first part. But we are not going to rank this quite yet because I want to watch more of this. Or we're going to watch more of this. So we kind of want to see after this first season how we're going. So I don't know how far we're going to get and whether or not we're just going, because might just hop around, because if it seems like we can kind of skip continuity a little bit, because it will be nice to see some of the later episodes, but we will see about that, and that will happen in about 2 weeks. So because in between this, so after this, we're well, I'll tell you what we're going to do after that, but we're going to have a movie in between, and then we're going to return to Pirates of Dark Water. So, before we head out, Axe, is there anything you want to plug?
Just twitch.tv/AxeImmortal.
All right, Rafferty?
Well, speaking of pirates, we just kickstarted for our company, sanguinegames.com. We are doing a Book of Corals, which is a piracy fantasy book for our Ironclaw game. So that'll be out real soon.
All right, and Torvo?
twitch.tv/torpidtypist and @torpidtypist on Twitter. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's about it.
You can do
Alright.
it. I believe in you.
I mean, do I want to though?
Yes, you do.
Do you want to plug up the holes that are in this ship that
In this
that are
arc,
No, I
water in
want
the
to
plot.
plug the gaping plot holes left by the terrible pacing.
All right, fair enough. That works. So yes. Next week we are doing something completely different, and I'm trying to wonder how we're gonna find this. So next week we're doing Digimon the movie.
Yes!
Oh
Yes,
man.
we are!
So that'll be fun. Because we're not doing the Japanese original, that's for sure.
Look, I love listening to kids in America
Whoa.
playing over these Japanese children doing whatever.
Yep. So that'll be next week. I'm sure that'll be an interesting thing because much like this, I have never seen that. But yes. Yeah. That's it. That's all we're doing for this. So thank you for listening. Hope you tune in for the next part. If you would like to look at the full list of rankings for yourself, please visit r3.ldp.life and go to the Media Delta List tab. If you would like to watch Media Delta's sister show, Retro Rank Rhapsody, you can either watch at youtube.ldp.life or by tuning into twitch.tv/LodaPuzzlo at 7:30 p.m. on Fridays, 2:30 p.m. on Saturdays, and 1 p.m. on Sundays. All those times are from the Eastern US time zone. If you would like to discuss this episode with the community, you can do so by joining our Discord server, which you can do so by going to discord.ldp.life. Thank you again for listening, and I hope you tune in for our next episode.